All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Allen Ulrich, here with Bob Rose tonight. How you doing tonight, Bob?
I'm doing all right, Alan. How are you? Neither one of us went blind from the solar eclipse, so I guess that's something in a
Uh,
positive direction.
you know, uh, it was nothing but clouds over here, so you couldn't even see anything anyway. And I revealed a little bit about my age, but um, I I remember the first I guess significant eclipse. It was in 1984, and I was outside with my neighbors and stuff, and we were just standing around. Of course, there was no social media, nothing like that. She had the sheet of paper with the paper in front of it with the hole cut out so you could see the
Yeah.
eclipse safely. Oh yeah, your shirt. Yeah. And she's looking at it like, I don't see anything. And I was like, I don't see anything either. But when the eclipse did happen, it was kind of cool because you had it's like the corona around the moon from it blocking the sun kind of turned the leaves shadows into like watercolor effects. It was
Yeah.
really weird looking. And that's what I most remember about it. And also, for all you ladies out there, that was the most significant 4 minutes that a person could have. So don't ever criticize if it's only 4 minutes. And now it's we have some weather, and that's what Anna was talking about, this weather event. They're closing everything right now because oh, I need my Wizard of Oz music. Dun 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 dun. Dun. We're supposed to have tornado warning, a lot of tornadoes coming through this system because
Mm.
it's a cool front, but it's meeting a lot of humidity. This is what happens in the South in Louisiana in the springtime. This warm, humid air meets this cool front coming down. We still getting those right now.
Mhm.
And when that air meets, that's when you get all the tornadoes, just like what happened to Tornado Alley and everything else. So, people acting like Annie M, got to get in the basement. Of course, there's no basements here, but got to get in the basements. So it's it's going to be interesting tomorrow. Tomorrow, we'll see who goes to work and who doesn't in my house. Um, Listen, I called this show In Too Deep because I wanted to kind of go deep into the draft, the draft picks, and what positions, kind of grade the overall position, and then just kind of like, okay, these are the picks the Saints have. Um, these are the positions. Here are the top 4 or 5 players in that position, or guys that the Saints should probably look at. Because, I know that most people, when they look at the draft live on ESPN or NFL Network, we kind of get sucked into the Mel Kiper list or whoever the analyst is now on NFL Network. I don't even know who it is anymore, but kind of their list of, oh, these are the top 5 players, or these are the best players still available on the board. And so we kind of get all worked up. And then when the Saints don't pick one of those guys off of Mel's list, people are like, man, they don't know what the hell they're doing. They
Yeah.
took Alvin Kamara. He didn't even start over in Tennessee, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of funny about this. So I kind of would like to give everybody kind of ready for that. So when they see Mel Kiper's list, don't assume that Mel Kiper or anyone else is the be all and end all authority on the draft. I think that kind of shaped a lot of people's opinions.
Yeah, no question about it. And they have been national voices for so long. Yeah, and a couple of them, you and I even would grow up watching and listening to, and I know you're the same way that I am. Matt, I don't know what you mean. But Alan, I know that you're the same way I am. We would grab our sporting news or Sports Illustrated, draft profiles and leaf through, and Mel Kiper's candidate would be not even in the top 12 of that particular position rankings. And anybody with reasonable intelligence as you got older, especially if you were a fan of a certain team, especially if you were a fan of a certain team, you would be more apt to follow or read the pieces from your, and I'm patting myself on the back. You'd be more apt to follow or read the pieces from the beat writers that covered your specific team, because I know what I do. Going into every off season, I won't lie, I didn't look a whole lot at the quarterbacks, didn't look a whole lot at the running backs, didn't look a whole lot at the cornerbacks. Reason being, those are not Saints areas of need. And I know we'll talk about that in a minute. Those are not Saints areas of need. So I would focus more on, okay, what's my team? What's this team need this off season? Not only immediate needs, but whose contracts are expiring after the year, who's getting up there in age, who's coming off a down year that maybe the franchise is looking to replace. That kind of thing. That's how I do my own draft research.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I go back. Okay, yeah, smart ass comment. Yeah, they had eclipses in 1900s. I go back to the old Times Picayune and the columns that Pete Finney did, or the column that Dave Lagarde or one of those guys would do, and they would kind of. It really. Here's the thing about the draft. When ESPN started televising the draft, that's when people really started to get interested in what was going on in the draft, because for the most part, people had no clue as to when the draft was. It wasn't televised. Who you selected, you found that out in the paper the next day. Like, oh yeah, they had a draft the other day. Like Archie Manning was drafted in 1971. He was still at Ole Miss. They called him at the school. He had to go to the athletic department's office at Ole Miss to find out he got drafted. They didn't even talk to him. And we found out about it via the newspaper. Nobody knew any of this stuff. It was just a list of names they posted. No one saw any background yet. If you were really a diehard fan, maybe you picked up a Street and Smiths to read this stuff, but that's about it. And Joel Bushbaum was the first person that really started putting the draft guides together for Old Pro Football Weekly, and he passed away in the early 90s, late 80s, no, early 90s. He passed away in the early 90s, but he was kind of the first person, and that's what Mel Kiper kind of built his whole empire out of.
Yeah,
doing basically what Joel Bushbaum did, but he wasn't as in touch with stuff as Joel Bushbaum. So when ESPN started televising, that's when they started getting interested. This is 1986 Saints highlights, by the way. I would watch my first draft 2 years later. 88 was the first draft I ever watched. Because they were. It was like picking up the New York Newsday or something. It was.
Yep.
I do remember those. You would go to the newsstand and go pick those up and pretend like you didn't notice all the nudie magazines at the top, and you come and get it. Well, it's true. I mean, you know, I'm a teenager. I'm looking around, and all of a sudden, I'm like, whoa, what the hell is this? And like one of the guys I used to work with used to say, you could tell they were really. Which ones were the really raunchy ones, because they had like one word as their title, and there was no text at all in it. It was all just pictures. So the less writing they had, the more raunchy it was. But anyway, that's terrible. But so when you start watching things, now you're starting to know names. Now you're starting to see draft profiles show up in your local newspaper. Now you're starting to see the Bob Detillier. I tell you what, I've said it many times. I miss Mike Detillier's book, because Mike was the first one to locally to really put together a draft guide, and he would have everybody. I mean, David Onyemata was in it.
Mm-hmm.
Akeem Hicks was in it. I mean, these are guys that nobody had in their draft board. They couldn't even find footage to show when the Saints selected these guys. He selected like Akeem Hicks in the third round. They selected Onyemata in the fourth round. They had nothing, no video footage. So it's just amazing how much it's grown, and it's become to the point now that everyone does these mock drafts and stuff. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a minute because I want to go ahead and get started on these things. I looked at the quarterback class, and this is supposed to be every year they use, there's Dan Marino, every year they use the 83 class as like the measuring stick. How would you rate this class if you had to put a grade on the quarterback class? How would you rate it?
I'd give it a B, maybe a B plus, Alan. And I don't hand out A grades lightly, not on players and certainly not on positions as a whole. There's a few players in this draft that, the quarterbacks that I believe are going to be overdrafted because of the position that they play and the desperation. But I give it the higher grade because I actually think that I like the depth of this quarterback class. I like players like Pratt. Love Michael Penix, who may or may not be drafted in the first round. He's one of the ones on the fringe there. Would love Jordan Travis if he wasn't hurt. Joe Milton, guys like that, guys that I believe could even slip into day 3 that have a real shot at being, the next flash in the pan, the next Tony Romo or Tom Brady, or I'm not saying that because of accomplishments. I'm just saying a day 3 or maybe an undrafted guy that could come in and earn a starting job and put together a decent, if not better than decent NFL career.
It's funny. Calvin just asked this question. I was just getting ready to say, I've done 4 or 5 mock drafts on different sites just to see how it plays out. And in 2 mock drafts I've been in, Penix is there at 45.
Yeah.
It's a tough decision because I like Penix a lot. I think that is, when you were talking about the class, I like to think that there's a couple of day 1 starters, but there's a lot of guys in there who probably will be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years later, the kind of guys that would probably start in the league. Guys like a Kirk Cousins, like a Gus Frerotte, like a, even Derek Carr, guys that probably can come in and start for teams later on, but not guys that just jump off the board as, put him in on day 1. I only see a couple guys like that. So Penix, I think, is one of those guys.
Yeah.
I think if the Saints had the opportunity to take him, Steve Young is a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. That's a rare sight. But if the Saints have the opportunity to take Penix at 45, it would be tough to pass on him. It really would. I thought about Will Levis last year when he slipped down in the first round to us. It was like, would you take a guy like him, a possible first-round pick coming all the way down to you? You just signed Carr. It wasn't a guy that you were ready for yet, but it's just something I thought about. So how about you? Would you think about taking Penix at 45?
Absolutely. I'm like you. I love Michael Penix. And I think Penix or Bo Nix And I know people have all kind of wildly swinging views on Bo Nix. Penix or Bo Nix are going to be this year's Will Levis, a guy that a lot of people talk about going in the first round that is just going to inevitably slip out of the first and have teams scrambling to get him in the top half of the second round. I love Michael Penix. He's my favorite quarter. I'm not saying he's the best, but he's my favorite quarterback in this class. So would I take him? Absolutely. Hell, I'd consider taking him at 14, if I was in need of a quarterback. Will the Saints take him even at 45? Absolutely not. Because Dennis Allen and I'm going to say this again, Dennis Allen and Derek Carr are tied at the hip, like the Titanic and the iceberg for you haters. And Dennis Allen simply doesn't want any competition for Derek Carr because he already hears enough noise about Carr, about his own coaching ability. He has made up his mind. The franchise has made up their mind that Dennis Allen is their coach for at least this year. With Dennis Allen, who has also made up his mind that Derek Carr is his quarterback. Come hell or high water. And the Saints fashion themselves as contenders, at least for the NFC South. So you better believe that they're going to fill their first and second round draft choices, fill them with positions of immediate need. Offensive line, defensive line, or whatever other positions you want to plug in there, but it won't be quarterback. No matter how much we think it should be, no matter how much it should be, and no matter how much we want it to be. It's just not. Would I pick Michael Penix? Absolutely.
I think this is probably going to be a defining moment really approaching this offseason. If the Saints were to take Penix at 45, that tells me that they are going to do things based off of the future only. It's not about winning this year. It's about getting guys set up for the future with the idea that you are setting Penix down for a whole year. Let him compete probably in 2024 or 2025. Sorry, I forget what year we're in. Compete in 2025 for a starting job because you're probably cutting bait with Carr by 2025, 2026, somewhere around there. If Carr turns out to be a guy who leads the Saints to an 11-5 record, 11-6 record, and gets to the wild card round, wins that playoff game, gets the divisional round, and maybe loses the divisional round, then Carr might stick around more. But if this team finishes 7, 8, 9 wins, doesn't win the division, again, Penix would make sense there only because I think Penix fits this offense just as well as Carr does.
Oh, yeah.
The things that Penix does well, this team is going to be set up to the things that Penix does well. Short, intermediate passes. He's a drop back passer, doesn't run much, has a good arm to throw the deep ball, but his main game is dink and dunk. We're going to dink and dunk you and then take our shots when we take our shots. So that's why I would take him. He's my favorite as well. I like him above almost everybody else in this class. I'm probably giving this class a C+, B-, only because if you look at pure starters, day one starters, I only think there's maybe 2, 3 at the most. And I think 3 is kind of stretching it, honestly. JJ McCarthy is now being pushed upwards to be that third starter.
Yeah.
And I don't see it. I think it's just going to be Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels as the 2 starters coming out of this group, but 3 are going to get drafted.
Oh, easily. Alan, do you see? And quarterbacks are the easiest to criticize as far as boom or bust. Do you see any quarterback, that's projected to go in the first or even second round, where you yourself, based off of what you've seen, You yourself are saying, I wouldn't touch him. This guy has bust written all over him, and I'm setting my franchise back a minimum of 2 or 3 years.
Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
I mean, that is probably the biggest, and I've felt this way since the Cotton Bowl game. First off, I've learned stay away from USC quarterbacks.
Yeah.
It's just Carson Palmer was the last. I just do not trust USC quarterbacks. But Caleb Williams this past year, Caleb Williams this off season getting ready for the draft has been bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
His behavior is insane. I mean, I don't know how much of it's legit. I mean, there's so much garbage that gets put out there, but talking about wanting a percentage of the franchise that he gets drafted by, making statements like, don't you dare draft me, I'll go somewhere else or whatever, I'm a holdout or whatever. I mean, guys who are focused on winning don't make those kind of statements. That's the difference between a Ryan Leaf and a Peyton Manning.
Mm-hmm.
So he's probably the biggest. I mean, Drake May, I'm a little nervous about. I just feel like he hasn't started enough games.
Yeah.
And the level of competition he plays. I mean, I like him, but Drake May I would feel, and I feel like he's going to go to New England because I just feel like the draft is going to be Williams, Daniels, May. Boom, boom, boom. That's the top 3 picks. And then the bloodbath for J.J. McCarthy begins among all the rest of the teams. I mean, to me, that's why the Falcons signed Cousins.
Yeah.
Because they look at this class going, I don't trust any of the guys that may fall to us. We see who the top 3 are, but I don't want to hook my franchise up to one of these guys. Yeah, Trask, Bo Nix, Bo Nix. My thing with Bo Nix is I don't like, and I'm saying this after we just praised Penix, but I don't like quarterbacks who transfer from an SEC school, a strong school, and have jumped over to a Pac-10 school that's kind of got a gimmick offense that kind of inflates your stats. And that's how I feel about Bo Nix. He gives me Andre Ware, David Klingler kind of vibes. That these are video game numbers. You're not going to be able to do this in the NFL, but it's a different NFL from back then. So I don't know how that's going, if he's going to be able to correct that. It doesn't. I just remember looking at him in Auburn and going, this guy, he's okay, nothing special. And that's, I felt the same way about Malik Willis too, when he went from Auburn to Liberty. And I watched the Liberty UL game. We kicked the shit out of him. But I mean, they were not good. He was not that good, but he inflated his stats. I read an interesting thing. For some reason, I guess because I follow David Harrison on social media, I'm getting a ton of Washington Commanders news popping up in my social media feed. And man, they got some people who do not like the Redskins, Commanders, whatever they want to call themselves now. The idea of them taking Daniels. This guy really savaged Daniels pretty good about, saying he inflated his stats against Georgia Southern and against Grambling, that when he had to play legitimate teams like Florida State and Alabama, he wasn't that great. It's just, I'm like, I'm glad I'm not in this debate. I got no skin in this game. It's just interesting to look at from here. Who do you think it would be a bust out of this class?
Drake May. is at the top of my list. To me, he's just too wildly inconsistent. Did not play well for North Carolina in their biggest games, in the biggest games on their schedule. The last year and a half or so. Uh, but having said that, I severely question whether Caleb Williams has the mental or emotional makeup to handle NFL criticism. I'm not nearly as down on Bo Nix as what Calvin is, but I'm somewhere between Calvin and you. As far, I watched a lot of Bo Nix at Auburn too, and I even thought at the time, I'm like, the guy's going to be in the NFL, but he's the kind of player, he's only going to be a success if he goes to a quarterback guru and a system that's going to kind of tailor him along. I feel that way about JJ McCarthy too. I think JJ McCarthy, Bo Nix, both have an above average ceiling. But if you're drafting either of those guys top 10 overall, especially if you're trading to get them, you better get a guy that's going to have a hell of a lot bigger, higher ceiling than above average. So that's why. That's why I don't give this quarterback class an A, because I question Caleb Williams' makeup. I wonder, it's system dependent for me with Bo Nix and JJ McCarthy, and I think Drake May has bust written all over him. The only reason I inflated the grade slightly is because, again, I love the depth in this class. I think you could find 2 to 3 legitimate NFL starters in day 3 picks.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I like Pratt better than some of these guys. They've gotten elevated up to the day 2 picks. And I just feel like quarterback is so overrated now in the NFL because, if you get a good one, my God, you have a guy. You've got somebody you can build your team around. CJ Stroud, we're seeing that right now with the Texans. You've got a guy you can build your team around, and you're trying to do it quickly because you want that 5-year rookie contract where you can pay a lot of different players and build your team around him before you have to cut the check for the big one, the big check for your quarterback. And I think as a result, people start grabbing quarterbacks in the first round just so they can get that 5-year deal. And you end up getting guys or bringing in guys who just aren't ready for prime time. And that's why my grade is what it is, because a lot of these guys need to sit for a couple years. They're not day 1 starters. And I think making them day 1 starters, especially because there's no developmental league in the NFL, all that's going to be is these guys we bust, like a Kenny Pickett, like Justin Fields, like just go down the list. And Young is on his way. Bryce Young's on his way of becoming that, because he's going to get the crap beat out of him at Carolina because it's going to take them so long to build up talent around him that they're going to cut bait with him way too soon, and you have to try and fix a wreck quarterback. Colleges aren't developing quarterbacks either, so that's a whole nother debate for me. I mean, that really drives me nuts because the spread offense sucks as far as developing quarterbacks. One read and run, that shit needs to stop, because you're not preparing these guys for realistic future potential, because you can try that shit in the NFL, but the problem is the field is narrower because where the hash marks are, and players are just too fast. Defensive linemen that are 275, 300 pounds can run 4.4s. So you're not the fastest athlete on the field anymore. You can get away with some of it for a little while, but they catch you and they're going to break you unless you're a thick player like Lamar Jackson. Let's see. Goodell's hate for Calvin's hate for Nick's rivals Bob's hate for
It
Goodell.
does.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Okay. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so let's look at running backs next. That's a position I haven't really looked hard at because honestly, the Saints don't need a running back.
No.
You drafted one last year. You still have Alvin Kamara. You've got Jamal Williams. What you know, how you're going to fit another back in here? It, it just doesn't make much sense. But how would you rate this class overall?
I'm like you, and like I said at the beginning, I didn't. I haven't looked very much in depth. The ones that I have looked at are possible day three picks. It will look. It wouldn't surprise me if the Saints do grab a running back, if they see somebody in the fifth, sixth, seventh round and say, you know what,
Mm-hmm.
we like him on our board. He fits our system well, and I've always said this about day three picks. You're not drafting for need. Then you're drafting literally the best player on your board or the best player for your system. Um, but I mean, having said that, I think Trey Benson. If you're looking at the top of the class, I think Trey Benson is a real quality NFL back. Blake Corum, as much as I loathe Michigan, Blake Corum is just a fun kid to watch play football. Uh, but
Mm-hmm.
running backs they're so difficult to put a grade on. And like I said, I've watched so little of them that I'm going to give them a C. Because outside of Trey Benson, there is no guy that you're going to look at and say, and Quorum, there is no guy that you sit pretty confidently and say, all right, whoever drafts this guy is going to get a real find and a sleeper. A sleeper pick or a sleeper starter. I heard or I saw someone mention the kid from Louisville. Frank Gore Jr. is a late round pick that's caught my eye. A lot of a kid that a lot of Saints fans have fallen in love with. Vidal from Troy, Kimani, I think you pronounce his name. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
wants to compare Jalen Wright to Alvin Kamara just because he's an athletic back from Tennessee. Jalen Wright can't do. Jalen Wright has game-breaking straight-ahead speed. He's not Alvin Kamara. When I started hearing people talk about Jalen Wright, I flipped on for some film. It took me two and a half games to realize I'm like, okay, we're done here. Yeah, Frank Gore Jr. is not his dad, Calvin. That's not something you got to remember. That's the comparison everybody is going to make on him. He comes from a small school, and again, we're not debating about a round one or round two pick here. We're debating about system fits late in the draft, and that's the way I'm looking at the running back position from the Saints' perspective going into this year's draft.
And when I look at the the draft class for the running backs, it's probably about a C. I don't see any first round guys. There's no Bijan Robinson. There's no guy that just dominated college football because that's not how the running backs are even used in college anymore. What we've seen running back by committee in the NFL, you were seeing that at the college level as well, where it's just a bunch of different running backs. Plus, you've got the running quarterback now involved in it. So that's even fewer carries for backs. Um, so when I've done my mock drafts, honestly, what I have seen is a whole bunch of picks, bunch of backs showing up in the third, fourth, fifth round. All that stuff coming down. That's what these guys, where these guys are kind of falling, and it's just amazing to see. But it's because they're jack of all trades, in some cases, masters of none, or
Mm-hmm.
they're one trick ponies. They're either big lumbering power backs who only run straight up the field, or they're essentially third down backs. They're pass catching backs that are kind of quick to get out in space, but they're not any good to block or anything like that. So, if the Saints, to me, if they're looking at a back, I think they would be looking for somebody maybe as a kick returner or maybe a power back to run inside.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, kind of challenge Jamal Williams' job, something like that. But the overall backs that you used to see, they're not in this class at all. Um, so it's just like I said, there's some names out there, some big time programs, but nothing really that just jumps out at me. Um, Receivers now, that's an interesting group.
Hmm.
To me, I think you're seeing that's where the quality of this draft is
Yeah.
as far as skill positions. It's in the receiving class. A lot of guys that can, and I think this is why teams like Buffalo are trading away players. You see teams unwilling to pay guys because they can see some quality receivers that come in the draft every year now.
Yeah.
Um, what would you grade this class of receivers?
I'd give the wide receivers a solid B plus, right on the fringe of an A.
Mm-hmm.
I love the top three receivers. I love Harrison, I love Neighbors, and I love Adunze from Washington. After that, if you ask me, there's a fairly decent drop off until the next tier. But you're going to see guys like Brian Thomas from LSU go in the first round. You're going to see a Keon Coleman, who I really like from Florida State, maybe sneak into the first round or early in the second round. What I love about this, receiver class is, you kind of hit the nail on the head. It has a lot of depth to it. It has really good route runners, slot specialists, bigger guys with outside deep speed. I think I'm positive you're going to be able to find a quality receiver well into day three. But like I said, after the top three, there's a big drop off, to the next tier. You're going to see a Brian Thomas, a Keon Coleman, the Worthy from Texas because of his 40 time. You're going to see guys like that maybe go into the first round. At least two or three other ones of the players I just mentioned that maybe in previous years wouldn't be. On the radar for first round picks. But like you said, Kansas City wants to pick up another wideout from Mahomes. Buffalo has no receivers for Josh Allen. You're looking at some of these other teams that are going to be picking a quarterback or already have a young quarterback as early first round picks. They want to surround them, obviously, with receiving talent. So they're going to be, if they don't already have a second pick later in the first round, they're going to be looking to move back into the first round to maybe target a guy like Franklin or one of those Texas kids. Mitchell is another one. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to mention Mitchell because that's probably the underrated of the two receivers. You see Worthy get mentioned a lot, but I think Mitchell actually would better fit what the Saints are trying to do. So I agree
I'll
with you,
agree.
Calvin. I like Mitchell better, and I know why he's picking Leggett over Coleman. Coleman is 6'3", 210. Leggett is 6'1", 225, and built like a fire hydrant. I mean, the comparison in this magazine, Lindy's, is Cordell Patterson, which that's a hell of a comparison
It
for
is.
him. But yeah, you're talking about somebody, physically who can just beat on you, can, because I don't expect him to get used like Patterson, but a guy like Leggett, you think of Deebo Samuel over in the 49ers system, you think of Cordell Patterson, maybe that's somebody you could kind of prepare post Taysom Hill, somebody you can prepare kind of to be that guy to come out there and run those jet sweeps and those inside plays and stuff. Use him not like a running back, but on running back kind of plays, if that makes any sense. Um, all of them though. I mean, the thing when you look at receivers, the one number I keep throwing away now is 40 times.
Yeah.
Because I don't care about 40 times anymore as far as receivers. We don't need speedsters because we've got two speedsters already.
Mm-hmm.
I said we need guys who can move the chain, can make the contested catches.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, I don't want somebody that's 4'6" or 4'7" or even 4'5", but almost every receiver today, because of the speed coaches and stuff, are all running four fours and sub 4.3s. I mean, it's just that's the one thing about this game that has changed is so many receivers. It's fitting. We're looking at Danny Abramowitz, but
Mhm.
the receivers now it's about speed, and everybody wants the speed guys, but sometimes you need those physical kind of guys. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm about.
when I break down receivers, I watch for separation, how they handle themselves in traffic, and whether they have an extra, how they attack the ball while it's in the air. If they
Yep.
have that extra gear, if they have reliable hands on contested catches, and if they have the leaping ability to give themselves, give their quarterbacks, a wider target range to hit. Those are the kind of things I look at, more than just deep plays and things like that.
Hmm. Oh yeah, wingspan is huge. How what kind of because that was one of the things about Jimmy Graham that made him so effective. He essentially had the wingspan of a box car. They said,
Yeah.
with his arms out there, so it gives the offense, it gives the quarterback a huge target to hit because he can be accurate, but he doesn't have to be pinpoint accurate
Hmm.
because he put the ball somewhere where the receiver can fight his way and grab the ball. And that's the other thing I like, So that's what intrigues me about him. So yeah, so I'm looking at guys that are 6'2" and above that are thick, big wingspans, big hands, physical guys who can catch contested balls. Because my thing is, yeah, I got two speed guys. They can run deep all day long, but I need a guy who's going to get the first down on 3rd and 7.
Yep.
Who can? That's what Michael Thomas made his living doing. They called him Slant Boy, but I tell you what, those slants converted in a lot of first downs,
Yep.
and that's how you win ball games: is converting third and first downs and getting in scoring position. So that's what I'm looking for. So to me, this is probably the first of the three positions we talked about so far. This is the first big area of need for the Saints. Um, would you be upset if they took a receiver in the second round?
Not at all. Not at all. Matter of fact, a big part of me expects it.
Hmm.
And unless, we'll get to defense. Are we doing offense this week and defense next week?
I think that's the way we're going to have to do it because we're not going to have enough time to do the whole thing.
Okay. Yeah, a guy that you and I both love is a second round pick, Tavondre Sweat, the defensive tackle from
Hmm.
Texas. That's who I
Hmm.
want in the second round. If he's not on the board or they go somewhere else, I want it to be wide receiver. And again, there are several. I love Adunze from Washington, but I love Jalen Polk, his teammate there, almost as much. He is that bigger, thicker guy, make decent after the catch, has the speed to beat defenses on all three levels, but really works the intermediate area as well. That's just one of 3 or 4 guys who I would love to see on the board in the second round. So, yeah, not only would I not be upset, I sort of expect the Saints to go receiver in the second round. If not, all those fifth and sixth round picks that they have that we know that they're going to trade to get into the early fourth round or in the third round, it's going to be for a wide receiver if they don't grab one in the second.
And it's tough because this is the year I think this draft will be made or broken in the second to fourth rounds
Yeah,
because that's where there's so much talent right there. And it's killing me. It is killing me that we don't have those
I
picks.
know.
Um, so when we talked last week, and the more I'm doing these mock drafts, the more I'm willing to burn assets in the future just to get back into the third round. Not because I expect to win the Super Bowl, not because I want to get to the playoffs and things, but we need to rebuild the core. We need to
Mm-hmm.
rebuild the core of this team, and this is a good class to do that with. Um, we both like Sweat in the second. Man, if you can get Sweat in the second and then pick up one of these receivers, bottom of the second, top of the third, oh man. I mean, that would be. I'll be like, okay, done. We're done for
Yeah,
the day, man. Um, that's part of the reason why it's hard to take Penix at 45, even if he's there, because you don't have those other picks. If I had picks, you don't really have picks to burn, but if I had more picks in the top 100, I'm jumping on Penix at
Oh yeah.
45 and going knowing, hey, that's a core player now. I got a new core player. Hey, I can go grab this guy. That's another core player. And I'm putting together a solid draft because I need 2 or 3 of these kind of drafts to be that team that's ready to go challenge for the Super Bowl again. So that's how I'm looking at the draft now, not as somebody who's going, okay, who are the guys who are going to let me win now? That's not the kind of team this is anymore. That's what we were in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
4 years later, all these players are 4 years older now. Yeah, I expect that, Calvin. I really do. It's tough because there's a lot of these receivers I like that I would like to have them too. This is my thing about human nature. We have unlimited wants and desires. What we get isn't enough. We want more, and I want more because there's a lot of guys, and I'm like, man, I wish we could get him. Man, I wish we could get him because he would fit so well. So yeah, I mean, we're getting ready to do the offensive line next. No, I'm sorry, we got to do tight ends first, then the offensive line. Let's jump into tight ends real quick because I want to spend more time on the offensive line. Tight ends, Bowers. I mean, that's the only guy. He's the be all and end all. I mean, there are guys out there, but to me, the tight end class is really a D. It's an F if you take Bowers out, only because just like the running backs, there's a lot of guys who do one thing well,
Mm-hmm.
but there's nobody who is the complete tight end, the pass catcher who can also block, who also is a mismatch problem. There's guys that can catch passes. There's guys that can block. There's guys with some size. There's guys who can really do a lot of stuff, but they're small. So that's why I'm giving it such a low grade, because once you get past Bowers, I don't see a Laporta. I don't really see anybody that's going to be a later day pick, like 3rd round, 4th round pick that's going to go, man, whoever scouted that dude, he got a steal, because that's a guy. I just don't see that guy. I mean, how would you rate this class?
C- or D, and that's only because Bowers is an A+ type of player. After that, I love Theo Johnson from Penn State. I think if he goes to the right system, he would be a draft steal. But as much as I love Theo Johnson, if I'm the Saints or frankly any other team, I'm not touching him before day 3. I'm just not. He needs too much development to his game, only because the idiotic morons that are on the Penn State coaching staff, they don't know what offense actually is. But yeah, I think Theo Johnson has a chance to be a steal. I know a lot of guys love Jatavion Sanders from Texas. He is that smaller guy that can do a lot of things well on the collegiate level that you just said. But you question whether it translates to the NFL level. I feel that same way about Jaheim Bell. He looked like Shannon Sharp in college, but is he going to be able to stand up to the bigger, just as athletic linebackers and bigger, just as athletic safeties at the NFL level? To me, to me, guys like Jaheim Bell, Sanders. There's another, again, the name is escaping me, but Bell and Sanders, and even to an extent Theo Johnson, they're too much like Jawan Johnson. And the Saints already have a Jawan Johnson. So I'm not going to say it's a waste of a draft pick if you get them. But again, I certainly wouldn't look at any of these guys before day 3. Bowers is going to go, not only 1st round, but early first round. And after that, you're probably not going to hear another tight end's name until maybe someone takes a leap on one of those guys I just mentioned, late in day 2, late in the third round. But before that, you're not going other than maybe a chance, you're not going to hear any of these other guys' names until day 3.
Yeah. There was a guy I was going to ask you about. Not Wiley from TCU, although he is somebody I kind of have circled in crayon only because of his stats, his size. He's got a possibility. He's like Theo Johnson, about the same size. But where is he? Eric All from Iowa. What do you know much about him? Have you looked at anything with him?
Yeah, I had to because of the tight end talent that's come out of Iowa in the last decade. Has just been eye popping. So I had to look at Eric All, and the one conclusion that I made almost instantly is he's not in the same caliber as those other Iowa tight ends. He is a scheme fit, a blown up receiver that's not very fast, that is a willing blocker, but just awful technique. And like I said, the other tight ends that we've seen come out of Iowa, they have been so successful. And I look at Eric All, and I'm like, is he? First thing that popped into my mind was, is he just being mentioned as a possible draft pick at all? Because there's been so many other Iowa tight ends that have had success in the NFL. That's a conclusion that I came away with. I'm not saying he's garbage. I'm not saying he's trash. I don't say that about any of these kids, because a lot of them, it's scheme based, and how hard they're willing to work once they get to the next level. So if Eric All is on the board in the 6th, 7th round, I would say, you know what? All right. I'll grab him. He's a developmental guy. Maybe I could stash him on the practice squad if he doesn't turn too many heads. And Matt, like you said, he's been okay. You expect an Iowa tight end to be better than okay.
Yeah. That's kind of how I came away with him. He's got the measurables you want, but he's not physical enough. He's just not quick. He is exactly what you said. He is you said this class is a lot of Juwan Johnsons. He's another Juwan Johnson, but even less explosive. He's you almost want to say he's kind of like that guy Kroll that we had in the practice squad last year. A guy who looks like he might be able to do something, but basically, he's a free agent, 6th or 7th round pick, and he was one of these guys that pops up in those mock drafts a lot. From about the 5th round on, you keep seeing his name come up over and over and over again. And that's about where I expect him to go if you even draft him. Not a guy who's going to blow you away. Just a guy. He's just a guy, So, there's a couple other guys. Bell, you had mentioned. He reminds me more of a fullback than really a tight end. He's kind of an H-back kind of player, and we just, that's not what you see in the NFL anymore. But that's what he would be. He would be a guy that could you probably try and convert him to fullback almost, to see if you could do something just because of his size, 6'2", 225 or 230 or something like that. He's not, for a tight end, he's not big at all. He's somebody that you almost want to convert him into a back just to see if you could use him and his blocking skills and stuff. Boy, I would love to have a Mike Allstott. I tell you what, I really, really would. But they don't make those anymore. But anyway, offensive line. Let's look at guards and tackles together, because we pretty much last week laid it out. I mean, tackles are the top position. Oh, let me ask you real quick. Tight ends. Um, how important is it the Saints need to draft a tight end this year? What
Not
do you
as
think?
important as a lot of people make it out to be. And, and I've said this several times too. The Saints, and we saw it with Sean Payton too. This isn't just a Dennis Allen thing. The Saints just don't value tight ends very highly. They used a third round pick on Jimmy Graham, but even they acknowledged at the time, this is just a former basketball player with tremendous athleticism that we think could be a developmental project. Well, they hit on that, obviously. Outside of that, in the last 2 or 3 years, there have been several top tier tight ends available in free agency that were signed at very affordable contracts that the Saints just ignored this year, including. Um, that tells me they're happy with what they have in the room. And I hate that saying, but they literally are in this
Yeah,
case. Um,
yeah,
and
yeah. I think.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say. I think guys like Travis Kelsey, guys, the difference makers at tight end, Sam Laporta, those kind of players, they'll rate those highly. Okay. Um, if Brock Bowers, I'm sure Brock Bowers is in their top 15, if not top 10 on their boards. And I think if Brock Bowers falls to 14, and the top 3 or 4 offensive linemen they want to have, those tackles, are gone for whatever reason, they're taking Bowers. But if the choice, I can so relate to this dude right here. Every time I see this clip, I'm like, that. You want to see what I was like as a Saints fan as a kid? That guy right there. But anyway, um, when they if they have one of their top tackles on the board and Bowers, they're taking the tackle. It's just that simple. And I think, and I agree with you. He's a flashy piece, but where they are as a team, I think they know they need to get that tackle in this
Yeah.
draft. So going back to the offensive line, who are your top 3 tackles?
My top 3 tackles are easy. It's Alt from Notre Dame, Fashanu from Penn State, and Fuaga from Oregon State. Just like with wide receivers, I love the depth at tackle, but to me, there's a rather significant drop off between those top 3 and the next tier. You're going to see you're going to see first rounders at the position outside of those 3. But it would only be like the Saints, for example, at 14. If Alt, Fashanu, and Fuaga are gone, and Brock Bowers is not on the board, as you said, I think the Saints reach and go for, grab a Latham or a Mills or a Fontanu from Washington. All of those will probably go. At least 2 of those 3 guys are going to be drafted in the first round. But to me, is a bit of a reach at 14. But when you have as glaring a need as the Saints do here, you almost have no choice.
Yeah, so I've been in those mock drafts. I get offered to trade down, and boy, I tell you what, when the right trade offer comes from like the Rams, because Blake Bowers is sitting there at 14, and they want to trade down to 19 or 20, I jump on it and I
Yeah.
take it. And that's who they go for every time is Bowers. But it's tough when I get trade offers from like the Lions, or I get trade offers from the Chiefs, or someone like, or the Ravens, or someone like that. When I'm dropping into the low 20s, it's hard for me to make that move. But if I can, to me, if the Saints are at 14 and all the top those top 3 tackles are gone, I am very tempted to slide down because a guy like Latham, a guy like maybe Fashanu is going to be gone, but Fuaga one of those guys is probably going to be there at 19, but will not be there at 29,
Right.
30, 27, somewhere like that. But I want to trade down so badly because, again, I want to get that extra second round pick. I want to get
Hmm.
a third rounder. I want to get more of those top 100 picks. So it's really tough because when I have accepted those late trades, it's ugly when you get to the bottom of the first round. It really is because you're looking at receiver. There's a lot of receivers. You're looking at a guard, which that's a tough sell to go grab a
Hmm.
guard. Um, it's just Mims or Mills, the Georgia tackle. I can never remember if it's Mims or Mills, but
Mims.
Mims. Okay, the Georgia tackle. He's there at like 21, 22.
Hmm.
Um, but the problem you run into with some of these guys is they've only played one side,
Yep.
or some of them are guys that go into really should be guards. Um, and that's a tough call too, because okay, if I'm going to get a tackle, I'm probably grabbing a right tackle to replace Ramchek. What am I going to do at left tackle?
Right.
Am I going to go grab Andres Pete again? Am I going to go find Becton? Am I going to put all my marbles then on Penning and hope the coaching will turn him around? That's tough. That's a tough call. So that's why I like those other tackles so much better, because they can play both sides,
Hmm.
and I'm not locked into one position. It's so tough. Yeah, I looked at him too. There's Paul. You know, Paul's really, that's if I were to trade with the Chiefs, for example, and picking 32, but I'm getting a shitload of picks for that 14th pick. That's where I'm looking at Guyton and Paul
Yeah.
falling down that far.
Maybe
Uh,
Jordan Morgan
um,
from Arizona. He's a
yeah.
kid. He's a kid that I actually like him better than Patrick Paul. By the way he plays now, Patrick Paul has a better upside, but
Hmm.
just he's awful raw. And like you said about Mims, Mims has only started like 8 or 10 games in his college career. So
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why I have these guys so far back after the top three. And to your point too, anybody that I've talked to that tells me, oh yeah, the Saints should trade down and pick up get a bunch of picks, or pick this guy at 14 and get a tackle at 45. I see the logic behind both. I really do. And the depth at tackle tells you that one of these guys should be there late in the first round, or even maybe at 45. But with as bad a need as you have at both right tackle and at both tackle spots, do you really want to roll the dice and gamble your mortgage and your kid's house fund or a college fund on the guys that might be there? You got to grab them while you can. To your point, I wouldn't mind a trade back of a few picks if those top three
Hmm.
tackles are gone. If you're offered, you got to do the quick math and say, okay, I'm trading back 5 picks. These other 4 picks, okay, this team doesn't need a tackle. This team might take a tackle. This team will go defense. It's you got to play those games all of a sudden,
Yeah.
and keep your fingers crossed that's one of the reasons why the Saints don't trade back, folks, because playing that game is just an awful big gamble.
Right. And the guys that are wanting to trade up to your spot, chances are they want the player that you're looking at right
Right.
now. That's the reality too. My thing always is, I want extra picks. They know we want picks. So that's why they look at us as a trade partner. But that's hard. And the other problem I have, you mentioned those other things. The other problem I have is, look what I've done already with tackles.
Yeah.
If I'm going to go get in the first round another tackle, I need to get a sure thing. I need a William Rofe. I need a Ryan Ramchek. I do not need another Penning. I do not need another Landon Young, although he wasn't a first rounder, or somebody a project. I need a sure thing because I got nothing. I don't know if Ramchek's coming back. I've got to consider that he's not.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I have to look at this. So I need two tackles. I can get away with one, but I need two. And I need somebody who's going to play the left side. I don't need somebody who can only play the right side.
Yeah. Before we move to guard, let me ask you this. Let's say you get your blue chip tackle at 14. Alt, Fashanu, Fuaga, even Latham, any of those guys. You get them at 14, and then you come back around at 45. What if a guy like Guyton or Mims falls or Fatanu falls? Do you go back-to-back tackles?
I really have to see what else is out there because I don't pick again to 150.
Right.
I got to sit there and look at this for a long time and go, I can get a right tackle here, but man, I'm going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel for receivers, safety, defensive tackle, edge rusher, and honestly, I'm even bumping edge rusher down. Only because it's a suicide pact, but Chase Young, and Foskey, I got to see if I can do something with those guys.
Yeah.
Cam had ankle surgery. I can maybe use him a little bit. I can scheme a pass rush. Okay. I'm confident enough in Dennis Allen as a defensive coordinator that he can manufacture a pass rush when he needs to, whether it's blitzing guys or whatever. I can't scheme a turnstile into a blocker. I've got to get that guy. But if I'm taking a tackle in the second round, I'm burning an asset in 2025 to get back into this draft in the third round because I cannot go that far and try and piece together defensive tackle, edge rusher, guards, receiver, all that stuff with those fifth round picks. You just can't do it. The Rams were a unicorn that they were able to do something like that. You can't count on that. And like I said, I think the meat of this draft is rounds 3 through 5, beginning of 5. 3 and 4, that's the meat of this draft here. That's where you get the best players. And it's just tough. I'd rather have 3 fourth-round picks, honestly, than 3 fifths. Even though they've done better in the fifth round historically, I just would rather 3 fifth-round picks. Guards. We know tackles like priority number 1. But guards. If you were to rate the guard group, how would you rate this group?
I put it right up there with tackles. I'd say an A. I mean, you have you're not because a guard is a guard. You might see one get drafted in the first round, but there's first round talent that's going to be available well into the third round potentially. I mean, Graham Barton, Zach Zinter. Barton's from Duke, Zinter is from Michigan. They're my 2 favorites. But Christian Mahogany, Boston College, Cooper Beebe, is one everybody loves. Christian Haynes from UConn, I loved his film. When I broke that down. The kid from LSU, Miles Frazier, stood out in film to me. And another guy I don't think enough people are talking about, and I would love to have him just because of his name, Brandon Coleman from TCU. Get me another Brandon Coleman on the New Orleans Saints. So I mean, and I'm sure the guard depth. I know the guard depth goes deeper than that too. The kid from Miami, Cohen, that I just profiled a piece on the other day. I think you could legitimately get a starting guard, perhaps even into day 3, and that's a bigger need for the Saints than what a lot of people think. I love Nick Saldiveri last year, but the fact that Saldivari couldn't get on the field with all their offensive line problems, that's a big worry to me. James Hurst is regressed badly on the tail end of his career.
I knew you were
What's
talking
his
about Calvin.
what's his name? Oh God, why can't I remember his name? The right guard, Michigan
Cesar
kid.
Ruiz.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, Cesar Ruiz.
Cesar Ruiz regressed bad. After he finally had a breakout 2 years ago, I thought he looked
Mhm.
awful at times again last year. And you don't have anybody on your roster right now to step in. Max Garcia. I think Max is a free agent. I hope to God he is. Because you want to talk about a 320-pound turnstile. So yeah, I think the Saints need to come out of this draft with a guard. Even if you nab one early on day 3, because I think some of the talents that I just spouted out there, I think they're going to start coming off the board. You'll see them as early as the 2nd round, but there'll be a few names there late in the 3rd round and early into the 4th.
There's a guy that he's a tackle for Missouri, who I think can really get kicked inside for guard, and that's
Yeah.
somebody I'm looking at in the 5th round.
Yeah.
I knew I was going to forget his name because Zach Zinter threw me off. I like Zach Zinter too. I know who he is. That's he's been injured a lot, but
Yes.
he's got some upside to him. Where's the guy from?
You're talking Missouri, you said?
Yeah.
Javon Foster.
There it is, Foster. I
Yeah.
knew it was Javon, but I couldn't remember his last name. Javon Foster is somebody I kind of have marked as somebody I can see the Saints looking at in the 5th round, who can slide inside at left guard. That's risky because now you got 2 rookies on that side,
Right.
but still a guy that I would like. Cohen, yeah, we just mentioned him from the U. He's another guy. But yeah, those are guys that I like that I actually can see falling to the 5th round. And guys I would look at. Zinter's another one because Zinter's had injury problems. Somebody who would fall, but he's got the size that you really want. Just different. That's we're talking about Foster, Javen Foster. He played left tackle and right tackle, but he is somebody I just there's a lot of tweeners that I think if you can fit them into your system and they're mobile, they would work really well to build up the inside of your offensive line. Carl Nix was a tackle at Nebraska when we drafted him, and boy, this is back in my SaintsReport.com days when I was on that website all the time. This is 2009. We draft Carl Nix. They're already cutting poor the kid from Georgia, the former tackle, right tackle from for the Saints. I can't think of his name because they hated him ever since they drafted him in 2004. I just drew a blank on his name, man. He does the preseason color analyst for the Saints network. Number 78.
I know who you mean too, but I can't think of the name.
Anyway, they wanted to cut him already. I'm like, whoa, guys, let's see what he can do first. And they moved him to guard, and of course, the Saints were fine at right tackle, but man, they hated him because he didn't play his rookie year. They say he was a wasted pick. That was a year we took back-to-back tackles, if I remember right, because I think we took him in the 2nd. No, I'm sorry. That was the year we drafted Charles Grant. So we took 2 guys from Georgia, and they were Saints fans were pissed about that. They get pissed, everybody.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing. Sitcom, Jonathan Sitcom. That's who it was. Yeah. They hated him from the day he got drafted, and it was only his Super Bowl year that they finally gave him the respect he deserved. but yeah, um, but it was it's just a shame because Jonathan Stitchcomb was a good guy.
Hmm.
I always liked him, and I felt bad for him. He got so much hate and didn't play his whole rookie year, and the Saints couldn't do anything right because that's the end of the Hazlitt years. They hated Hazlitt. It's a lot like right now. They hated
Hmm.
Hazlitt. They hated Aaron Brooks. They hated everything with the Saints. They had idiot coaches, the whole bit. Yeah. Um, and next thing you know, the Saints are in the NFC Championship in 2006, and Stitchcomb's made the right tackle, and oh yeah, he was a good player. We knew that all the time. So
Hmm.
it's just funny.
Right.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. Um, Bob, what you got coming up on the Bayou Blitz tomorrow night or
I think
Thursday
we're
night?
going tomorrow night. Yeah, I think we're going tomorrow night. I remember talking to Brendan about it, and I don't remember talking about a different day. So I'm assuming we're going to go tomorrow night. Uh,
Okay.
more draft stuff. Maybe focus on a couple individual, draft prospects. I know obviously there are hundreds and hundreds of them out there. But who the we all seem at least resigned to the fact that the Saints pretty much have to select a tackle in the first round. So like you and I have talked about, hinted at tonight in the last couple of weeks, really. Uh, who do they target in the second round? Not so much positions, but players. Players are what's going to attract the Saints in the third and fourth rounds. And this as well as anyone. When Mickey Loomis has made trades, and recently they've been very active in the latter part of the third round and early part of the fourth. It's not for a position, folks. It's for a specific player. So what kind of
Mhm.
players might cause the Saints to move some of those day three picks? Those are the kind of things we're going to talk about tomorrow.
Yeah, and there's a lot, honestly. Like I said, going through these mock drafts, it really, I'm looking at the guys that are still on the board after I pick at 45, and it's killing me because it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I would love to have these guys too. I mean, the brilliance of the 2017 draft class was that you had 6 picks in the top 100. That's how you got what you got. And Trey Hendrickson was 103.
Right.
So, 7 picks, if you would say the top 110. That's the bulk of your draft. After that group, the only other pick they had was like a sixth rounder who was at defensive end
Yep.
from the University of Miami.
Yep.
So the key to a good draft is multiple high picks. That's what it takes.
Yep.
And it's not just sucking or tanking for a year
No.
and being up in the top three because it does you no good if you're only picking 3 guys in the top 100. You need a lot of picks.
Yep.
And that's what's killing me as I go through this. Um, yeah, I next week I want to go into the defensive side. We can focus on some of the other guys because we're not going to do special teams. I know this team needs a punter. We talked about the kicker they brought in last week, but I really want to focus on defensive line, both ends and tackles, linebackers, and defensive back, especially safeties, because we
Mhm.
still need a safety. There's a lot of guys out there. Calvin had a good point. I think it was you got to bring in a guy before the draft. You can't. There's got to be somebody they got it in the hopper, and they got the phone sitting there waiting and saying, "Stay by your phone because we're going to be calling you probably draft day to have you come in on Monday to sign a contract because we didn't get our guy." But you got to get a veteran in there. You can't
Mhm.
go in with the guys that you got right now. So we'll talk about defensive line next week. Oh my God, I wish we could get him again. Oh,
Yeah.
that's the one thing I wish we could redo. Um, but we'll talk about that on next week, and then it's what 16 days to the draft, 15 days to the draft, something ridiculous like that.
Feels right. Yeah.
Yeah. Russell Baxter posts it all the time. He puts somebody's jersey number up, and he says like 16 days to the draft, 15 days to the draft. He had Lance Moore up the other day, so that's why I'm thinking 16 sticking in my head.
Mm.
But yeah. So we'll cover that. If we have enough time, we'll try and go into like a mock draft at least. One other question, and this has to do with really the Bayou Blitz. We're not going to do it, but the Bayou Blitz will. Are you going to do a live streaming during the draft that Thursday night?
Yes, we absolutely are. Yeah, Brendan and I will be all 3 days as we have been in recent years. Yeah, Alan, you're joining us, right?
Yep.
Am I putting you on the spot? Okay.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
My dad, fortunately, should be asleep by the time the Saints pick, but I'm not counting on it. So he's going to want to talk to me during the draft. My daughter is going to be with her friends, probably at somebody's house or some bar watching the draft. My son won't be here. He's over in Texas. So, yeah, my dad's going to have somebody he's got to talk to about these picks. And the Saints are going to be picking early enough, around 8 o'clock, 8:30, that I tell him I got to go on live, it's going to bother him. So I don't know, because my dad is loud. He's 82 years old, and his hearing is okay. Not as good as it should be, but he's 82 years old. And even when he was younger, my dad always thought that if you didn't answer him right away, it was obviously because you couldn't hear him. So he would repeat the question louder and with more emphasis, So I love my dad. I'm picking at him, but yeah, he's just one of those kind of guys. Yeah, Calvin. Somebody, I think Fletcher Mackle had some kind of horrible draft. I mean, it was the worst draft. They took a corner in the first round because he's trading Lattimore.
Yeah.
It was, and he like burned assets left and right. Oh my God! I said, I tweeted, if the Saints did that draft, I'm not a pitchfork and torches kind of guy, but I would totally stick Oli rags in a gas tank of a car, flip the car upside down, and light the rags on fire, because that's how pissed off I was. Because that is just that draft was a horrible draft. That draft is almost murder worthy. I mean, it was just that bad. And burning up assets for the future, so you're screwed for the next 3 years for garbage players. Oh, no, yeah.
Look, there's a reason why Fletcher Mackle was Fletcher Mackle, and I'll just leave it at that.
I think Moore would have killed him for that too.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you, Bob, for sticking with me, sticking with all of us tonight. As always, especially when we get into draft coverage, it really, really goes long. Next couple of weeks, we'll be scrambling for content. Anyway, thanks, guys, for sticking with us, and we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.